Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 28 of the On Deck podcast. I'm your host, Roberto, and today we're going to be diving into all of the trades that went on during this absolutely crazy trade deadline. We had a bunch of teams, buying and stacking their rosters for their playoff runs. We had only a couple teams really selling off a bunch of, in my mind, little questionable trades. Then we're going to be talking about some players that I thought could have been moved from, some of the selling teams this year. So all of that on today's episode. So before we actually get into some of the trade deadline stuff, I just want to start off with some, unfortunate news for two teams that, both happen to be in the AL East. We have Orioles starter Grayson Rodriguez. He is going to be missing the rest of the season. He's going under debridement surgery on his right elbow. And, this was someone that I thought could be a pivotal starter in this Orioles rotation that wasn't looking the strongest going into the season. I know I had talked about his tricep injury, and then he was dealing with some elbow stuff early in spring training, or maybe near the end of spring training. So, to hear this unfortunate news, just after the halfway point in the season, this really sucks. And this has been one of the Orioles' top prospects for quite a while now. This guy's just been riddled with injuries. So to hear this and potentially missing a good portion of next season, maybe he makes it back in time for spring training of 2026. But, for Orioles fans, this does suck. They haven't really had much to be happy about this year. So, unfortunate news. And then we have another AL pitcher, this one from the Boston Red Sox. Their starter, Tanner Houck, will be undergoing Tommy John surgery. And, off the start of the season, this guy just wasn't looking like Tanner Houck himself. The velo was down. Sweeper usage was down, and everything was just getting hit extremely hard. They put him on the IL for some elbow inflammation at first. It came back, the velo was up a tick or so, but never really looked like the Tanner Houck that we saw last year. Always had the Cy Young potential. And this year, the shoulder, elbow, all these injuries kind of derailed that. So, with him getting Tommy John surgery now, wishing for a speedy, quick recovery, he's able to bounce back for next year. But, this raises a couple question marks that in this Boston Red Sox lineup, because who's going to fill his spot for next year? I know they're getting Patrick Sandoval back at some point this year, so could he step into that role? But yeah, more unfortunate news for the Boston Red Sox, who just been having some unfortunate injuries. That whole Rafi Devers thing too. They had a big injury to Tristan Casas, and now Tanner Houck going down. These are some big players that, are no longer part of the team, quote unquote, right now. But the Red Sox are playing well without these guys. So should be interesting to watch them come postseason time, or even if they make the wild card, they can make some noise. But this is quite a big hit on their pitching rotation. So now moving on to all the trade deadline stuff. The way I'm going to be doing it is just running through the earliest trades, which started on July 25th, and then we're just going to make our way up to the more quote unquote recent trades, and give my thoughts and a quick little blurb about each trade. But man, there was a lot of trades that happened this trade deadline. And, it was quite interesting to see, Jeff Passan or all these other reporters just tweeting about the moves that were being made. And I think it's good for baseball. More and more trades that happen, kind of spices things up with teams that, are either on the brink of making either a wild card or making a run for their division. Or you have some of those teams that, are on top by, quite a bit, or maybe even just a couple games here and there. but are looking to bolster their bullpen, their hitting, or their rotation to, kind of fortify what they have into the postseason and really have no question marks. So I love this trade deadline. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. So with one of the first trades, we had Josh Naylor being sent over to the Seattle Mariners. And, the Arizona Diamondbacks received two pitchers, which were their 13th and 16th rated prospects. I personally like this trade for the Mariners. They didn't really give up, too much for this trade. Their 13th and 16th rated prospects for, a 2-month rental with Josh Naylor, but he definitely adds some thump into that lineup. And with Luke Raley going down, this is, a great move because now, once Raley is able to come back, can have him play more of the outfield. Because I think first base was platoon with Luke Raley and Donovan Solano. And I think most Mariners fans would have a guy like Josh Naylor manning first base rather than, a combination of those two. But I really like this move. This really helps that lineup, lengthen the lineup. And I think with the Mariners, this is a team to watch out for because I think as the season goes on, we know what their pitching rotation can do. And, they have Bryce Miller coming back at some point this season. This is one of the stronger rotations in the MLB. And I think if you have all those guys going how we know how they can go, the offense is just the only thing that's quote unquote lacking. But you have Cal Raleigh, Arozarena, you have J-Rod, you have Jordan Crawford. Like there's pieces there to make a run. So with you adding Josh Naylor into this lineup, I think it's only up from here for the Seattle Mariners. But we do have a move to talk about that a little later that, I think even fortifies this lineup even more. Next, we have the New York Mets picking up Gregory Soto from the Baltimore Orioles. And in return, the Baltimore Orioles got two pitchers, Wellington Arsena and Cameron Foster. And I kind of like this move for the New York Mets. Right now, they only have one lefty, and that being Brooks Raley. And, Brooks Raley is coming back from Tommy John, if I'm correct. So, just bolstering that kind of left side of their bullpen. And this is a guy that's been in high leverage situations before. Was a former closer for the Detroit Tigers and was a closer for a little bit during his time in Philadelphia. But this has always been a guy with high strikeout numbers, but also, some high walk numbers as well. So he kind of give and take with Soto here. But I like this move personally for the Mets. I would have liked to see him go to the Yankees, but that's obviously me being a little biased and clearly didn't really give up too much. But the Baltimore Orioles are a selling team at this point, and I think they can just be happy with whatever they can get for some guys that have been performing well for this team. Next, we got to talk about my New York Yankees, and this was one of the moves that I've been kind of waiting for quite a while, actually. Ryan McMahon is now a Yankee, and the Colorado Rockies received two pitchers, Griffin Herring and Josh Gores. This was a move that needed to be made for the Yankees. Third base has been it's been really bad since they moved Jazz over to second base, and a lot of the reps were going to Jazz at some points, but they'd bounce him and put DJ LeMahieu, who's no longer part of the team, at third base, and you'd have Oswald Peraza playing third base, who was grading out to be a good defender, but was giving you absolutely nothing at the plate. And now with this Ryan McMahon move, you have someone that can provide you some pop. Hopefully, short porch, Yankee Stadium. Everybody loves to talk about the short porch. But mainly here, you get the good defense. And That's what the Yankees needed. They've been making a ton, and I mean a ton of errors lately. And, with someone sure-handed as McMahon, especially on the hot corner, I think this can, elevate the defense. Hopefully, his defense translates to everybody else, but, can't guarantee something like that. But it's good to see that the Yankees kind of, saw a move that needed to be made and went out to go get someone who they've been connected to for quite a while. And we're just going to quickly touch on Amed Rosario being traded there too from the Washington Nationals. This was actually someone that I wanted the Yankees to go and get. This is a guy that can play second base, shortstop, third. Has even played a little bit of left field, I think, and right field with his time with the Mets. But, this is a guy, a contact guy, can put the ball in play. Has a little bit of speed, can play all over. I think this guy is a good bench bat. He also hits lefties really well. But I'm kind of glad that they picked him up. He's also, a vet. He's been around the league. He's a rental though, so he is on an expiring contract, but didn't have to give up much. Clayton Beeter was part of this trade, and this was someone that the Yankees received from the Dodgers in the Gallo trade years ago. It's still crazy that Joey Gallo was a Yankee. Kind of erased those memories out of my mind. But Beeter was just, he'd put up good numbers in the minors, but once he got to the majors, every single time they called him up, he'd get rocked. So, kind of happy that he's going off to somewhere where he can, maybe play a little more or pitch a little more, kind of get that major league experience and not have to be in such, high pressure situations where I think it doesn't really help as a young guy trying to come up through the minors. Next, we're going to be talking about the Kansas City trade with the Arizona Diamondbacks. This one was kind of a head scratcher for me. The Royals weren't necessarily doing the greatest in the AL Central, and this move was interesting. They traded for Randall Grichuk, and the Diamondbacks received right-handed pitcher Andrew Hoffman. Grichuk is a platoon bat. He's been always a really good platoon bat. The outfield was just giving the Royals absolutely nothing. I think they got another guy we'll talk about a little later. But, this is an outfield that's built of John Rave, Kyle Isbell, and then, a combination of MJ Melendez and Caglione. These are not scary bats at all, other than Cags when he's in there. But, he has a hamstring injury at the time of recording. So you're not really getting much production from this outfield. So what I think the Royals might do here once, MJ Melendez comes back, we might see a platoon of Grichuk and Melendez, or, Grichuk and Rave. Or honestly, it could be a combination of any of the outfielders, just to give them another quote unquote power bat. He only has 5 home runs through 70 appearances this season. So, you kind of get what you get with Grichuk, but he's always going to be a veteran that hits lefties really well. So this is, an interesting move from the Royals. But the more interesting part that came, a few hours later is that the Royals extended Lugo. This is Seth Lugo, starting pitcher. And this came as a surprise to me, who, I thought the Royals were going to be sellers this year. Haven't been doing too well in the AL Central, and I thought this would have been one of those retooling years, but, I was wrong. I think that it still blows my mind. He signed a 2-year extension with the team, and I think after the news that, Chris Bubich had gone down with some shoulder or with a left rotator cuff strain, and Cole Reagans is most likely going to be on the shelf for the majority of the regular season. I think this would have been the perfect opportunity for the Royals to trade Lugo. He's been pitching not up to the standards that we've seen him pitch with him wearing these Royals uniforms. But you know what you're going to get. You're going to get an innings eater, throws a bunch of pitches, is always really efficient in the strike zone. But yeah, a real head scratcher from the Royals, but who knows? Maybe they come back next year and, go on a run with their healthy starters all back. But this year, it doesn't really make too much sense to me. Next, we're going to be talking about the Detroit Tigers making a trade with the Minnesota Twins. Tigers received right-handed starter Chris Paddack, and the Minnesota Twins received Enrique Jimenez. Initially, this trade, kind of was another head scratcher because, I thought the Detroit Tigers had, a good starting rotation. Obviously, you have the best pitcher on the planet, Tarik Skubal, and then you have a bunch of guys that can, fill out the rotation. But this move made a lot more sense after, a couple hours later, we heard the news that Reese Olson was going to be down for majority of the rest of the year with a right strained shoulder. And, unfortunate for the Tigers, but I think Paddack can be in there to, eat innings at, a league average ERA, put up, average numbers and just be a part of that staff and kind of will their way into the playoffs. This was always a guy that has flashed good stuff, but has never really he has always lacked that consistency. But I think with, Paddack moving to a more pitcher-friendly park in Comerica, we should hopefully see an uptick in production. And, I think this could be a contributor onto the postseason roster, and, play a pivotal role into the Tigers making a historic run here, which they've been looking good this season. I know they've had, obviously every team goes through their bumps in the road throughout the regular season, but this is still a team that I still see handily taking it in the AL Central. Another AL East team making a move here. We have the Toronto Blue Jays receiving Seranthony Dominguez for Jerron Watts-Brown, right-handed pitcher. That's going to the Orioles. And I really like this move for the Jays. Seranthony Dominguez has always been a really good high leverage arm for the Phillies. He's had his moments with the Orioles last year after getting traded, but this is just another piece in the bullpen that, has quietly had some really good guys in there. Flu Hardy, Braden Fisher. We've seen the resurgence of Jeff Hoffman after a rocky start. So this is a guy that can give you, that lock down that eighth inning and then pass it over to Hoffman for the ninth. I really like this move for the Jays. It was interesting during the doubleheader with the Orioles. This trade was made in between games. So, you see Dominguez, kind of go over to the other side of the dugout for the second game. But really like this move for the Jays. Just bolster that bullpen, which was already looking to be, a pretty strong one. But yeah, overall I like this trade. Not much to really criticize about this one. Next, we have the Cincinnati Reds making a trade with the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Reds received Ke'Bryan Hayes, and the Pirates received Taylor Rogers and Sammy Stafura. This one was really confusing for me. I know the Pirates paid Ke'Bryan Hayes all that money on his extension. I think it was a very team-friendly extension, but regardless, I think they're kind of done with the Ke'Bryan Hayes experiment. This is, one of the best defenders in all of baseball. He leads all defensive third basemen with 16 defensive runs saved, but can't hit anything. At the time recording is like an 86 WRC plus, which is well below league average. This trade doesn't do anything for me or for the Reds. The Reds, obviously, you're just going to stick him at third base and have him be a defensive wizard that he is. But without making that much of a push on offense, this is a team, fighting for a wild card or trying to make a run for a wild card spot. And I think with them trading away one of their better left-handers for a defensive third baseman that can't hit, I don't. This was one of the confusing ones where I saw it across Twitter or X, sorry, and I was like, why? Why would they do that? The Pirates have so many other pieces. Why get rid of Ke'Bryan Hayes? But that is, that's the Pirates front office decision. Clearly they knew something that I don't, and we'll kind of just have to wait and see how this one plays out. Ke'Bryan Hayes, he is going to a more hitter-friendly ballpark, so maybe we see an uptick in his offense, but, I think this guy's just going to give you really good defense, and that's about it. Now, going back to the Mets, we have one of the bigger hauls for a team, and we saw the New York Mets receive Tyler Rogers, brother of Taylor Rogers. This is the submarine pitcher. And the Giants received Jose Butto, Drew Gilbert, and Blade Tidwell. Wow. This is quite a hefty price. I know Tyler Rogers is under control for a couple more years, but this is a haul and a half for a relief pitcher. Jose Butto was part of the Mets bullpen, and, he was a swing man going back from bullpen to rotation for the Mets last year. Drew Gilbert is one of their better hitting outfielders, and Blade Tidwell, I think he's made a couple spot starts for the Mets here and there this year. But, man, this is quite a haul for the Giants, and if you're the Giants, I think you're happy with this trade. You get really good hitting outfielder, and you get two pitchers that, are able to either slot back into, Blade Tidwell can hop into your bullpen right now and make an impact, or you can, have him throw in the minor leagues as a starter, really get him stretched out consistently, and then can be an impact as soon as next year for the team. Same goes with Jose Butto. I think this is a guy that they just throw into the bullpen immediately and, kind of get what you get with him. But the Mets, I think what I saw was this was more of a 40-man crunch to get, these three guys off the roster to make spots for, pending moves that they had. But if you're the Giants here, I think this is a huge W in the books for them. I know Tyler Rogers was, a very pivotal bullpen piece for them. Pitched a lot of innings over the years for them. At the time of the trade, he was already up to 50 innings of relief work. So this is great value for the Giants fans, and the Mets get a good piece for that bullpen that just keeps stockpiling more and more arms. And speaking of stockpiling, it didn't stop there. New York Mets traded for Ryan Helsley from the St. Louis Cardinals. Cardinals got Jesus Baez, Nate Dom, and Frank Esselot. Don't know too much about the prospects here, but just speaking for the guys that are on the major league roster, man, they're just stacking up bullpen arms here. Helsley was one of, if not the best reliever last year, winning the Trevor Hoffman Award last year. Career high 49 saves, and this guy throws absolute fuel. Will be really interesting to see if they have a closer by committee role here with him and Edwin Diaz. As Diaz over the last couple of years hasn't really looked like the Edwin Diaz that we all love, pumping high octane sliders or 90 to 92. I'll be interested to see, because honestly, I would much rather have Helsley in the closer role and have Edwin Diaz as, eighth inning or, high leverage, whether that be in the seventh, the sixth, even, might even be in the fifth at times, depending on situations. But I would honestly have Ryan Helsley as the closer here, but, I can see how, Edwin Diaz would be a little, defensive about the change in roles, but at the same time, when you have Ryan Helsley in your bullpen, in the same position as you, I think you kind of give it to the guy that's been, a little more consistent over the last couple years. And then we have another reliever that was traded in the same division. We have the Philadelphia Phillies getting Johan Duran, and the Twins received Mick Abel and Eduardo Tait. This was one of the more surprising trades in my eyes. I know that everybody had their eyes on the Twins and what they were going to do this deadline. I think they did a good job here with the return. Mick Abel has made a couple starts for the Phillies this year. He will absolutely be thrown into this rotation immediately. This is a guy that has always been a highly touted prospect, has had his ups and downs, wasn't really as sharp as we have seen in prior years last year, but, has shown flashes of good stuff at the major league level. And then Eduardo Tait, this is the Twins are a organization with slim to no catching prospects. So if you're able to slide Eduardo Tait right into your top 5 prospects easily, this is someone that I think they could bring up either next year or the year after. This is an absolute haul for the Twins here. I like the trade for both sides. Duran is immediately going to slide into that closer role, with Alvarado being on the suspended list for the playoffs. This is how you lock down the ninth. Absolutely, this is the way to lock down the ninth. And at the time of recording, Duran has made 2 saves already for the Phillies. And if you have ever seen Johan Duran's entrance from the Twins bullpen, and now making his way out to the bullpen from the Phillies, man, that is one electric entrance. Well, with all the lights, the flames, the animations on the screen. If you haven't watched it, I highly, highly recommend for you to watch that. It's just, it gives me chills watching it on the screen. When he came in against the Tigers for the 4-pitch save, oh my goodness, it was one of the cooler entrances I've seen in quite a while for a relief pitcher. But I'm excited to see Duran pitch for them in the playoffs, and I think, with the uptick in, impact that, the Phillies are compared to the Twins, I think we can see Duran even get better. Dare I say it. Now, the Boston Red Sox did make a move, and that's for a, swingman, but, I think they're going to use him more as a start or a bullpen role. And that is Steven Matz from the St. Louis Cardinals. And they received infielder Blaze Jordan. And I don't know if you guys are, depending on who you are, you might know the name Blaze Jordan. But this guy used to be a social media sensation, hitting 500-foot bombs at, what was it, like 15, 16 years old. This guy was like putting up Bryce Harper kind of stats. And hasn't really made a name for himself outside of, those early high school, late high school days. But I think with the Cardinals here, he could receive some kind of more playing time, at the corners, or, he could be the next Jordan Walker and get thrown out into the outfield. But I do like the trade for Steven Matz. This has been a guy that's had many ups and downs in his career. Went from a really good starter, to, posting up some horrible numbers. And then in his Cardinals tenure, has went from a starter into a bullpen role and been quite effective. Thrown over 55 innings of work, the time of recording, putting up a 3.44 ERA in those innings. I think in a bullpen role with Boston, I think he can be, he'll be mediocre. Not really expecting anything crazy here from Steven Matz. He's not going to go on some Cinderella run out of the bullpen for the Red Sox. But I think this is just another depth arm for them. I think he has a year left of control, or not at control, a year left on his contract. So, we could see him get stretched out into a starter next year and potentially get traded for an even bigger haul due to, him being a starter rather than, being a limited relief pitcher. Now, moving on to the Cubs, where they had made a move from the Baltimore Orioles to receive Andrew Kittredge. And this was always a guy that I always liked, even when he was on the Rays. This guy throws 2 pitches, and he throws them very well, a sinker and a slider. And this has been a really consistent arm when it comes to getting holds as well. Big holds guy at the end of every year. It's always him in the top 3 when it comes to holds. So with him being a part of the Chicago Cubs bullpen, this is absolutely a great move. This is a steady arm. And right now, Kittredge's ERA at a 3.56. That's the highest he's had in the last 5 seasons. So you just expect that to get lower. And, with the influx of horrible performances out of this bullpen for Chicago, I think if you can, weather the storm with the Andrew Kittredge in there, I think they're going to be in good shape in this NL Central, which is getting quite interesting right now. So I think this is a good move for the Cubs and, just bolsters that bullpen even more. And now we get into probably one of the bigger trades. This one happened at midnight. Geno Suarez getting traded from the Arizona Diamondbacks back to Seattle. This comes to quite a shock to many. We didn't know where he was going to go. There was multiple teams that were interested, but here the Diamondbacks receive infielder Tyler Locklear, right-handed pitcher Hunter Cratton, and right-handed pitcher Juan Burgos. I like this move for Seattle. This is another power bat for this lineup that needed some thump. And if we remember, not too long ago, Geno Suarez was a Mariner. And we all hear about the Mariners Stadium being a horrible place for hitters. This was a guy that hit 40 in there. So I think he's quite familiar with the stadium. So we could easily see, Geno Suarez uptick even more. This is a more hitter-friendly ballpark than Arizona. So I absolutely love this move for the Mariners. Again, like I said earlier, this rotation is good. You just have to get all your guys healthy, and I think this team makes a run in the AL West. So with Geno Suarez there, manning third base now, this is a lineup that is looking a lot more playoff ready, and it's looking a little more dangerous, in my opinion. So I absolutely love this move for the Mariners. And they didn't really give up anything too crazy, in my opinion. So I think this is a win-win for both sides. Now, here's a trade that, I've talked to multiple people about, this past weekend. I was in Windsor for senior baseball eliminations. And I have one of my teammates, shout out Dan Goldberg. He works with the Jays, and I had talked with him about the Shane Bieber for Cal Steven trade. And he saw it as a low risk, high reward kind of deal. And after hearing what he had to say about it, this is Shane Bieber, who has been recovering from Tommy John surgery. He was a Cy Young winner in 2020 during that COVID season, and looks to provide some kind of depth for this Jays rotation going forward. You just made a couple of rehab starts before the trade and has looked good. The velo was up to, I think it was reported, it was up to 93, touching 95 at some points. But yeah, this was a low risk, low reward, low risk, high reward. Because we all know what Shane Bieber can be. It's just, can he do it post Tommy John surgery? Um, Personally, I would have liked to see this trade being made like next year, because he is on a 2-year contract. He does have an opt out after this year, which is interesting. So if he pitches well once he's called up to the major league roster for the Jays, he could opt out and, get a bigger deal. Or, if, he doesn't pitch well, he'll pick up that option and be part of the Jays for a full season next year. So I see both sides of, the high risk, high reward, or the low risk, high reward kind of situation. But I would have personally liked to see this trade being made next year. I would have liked to see, you know, Shane Bieber pitch a full season, like half, or whenever he comes back from, his rehab, and then going into next year, have him have a full spring training to get kind of ramped up for the regular season. But at that point, his value could be higher. So we don't know what the haul would be to get a pitcher like that. But the Guardians received Cal Steven in this trade, who has been really good for the Jays in the minor leagues. Is really good pitchability. 4+ pitches. And once he hits the Cleveland Guardian system, he's just going to become an absolute monster. They've always been really good when it comes to developing pitchers. So looking forward to see Cal Steven and how he progresses in this Guardian system. So overall, I would like to see, Bieber pitch well for the Jays, obviously, because, Cal Steven is a good prospect to have given up. But, only time will tell with this trade. So we'll see who gets the better end of the stick here. Next, we have one of the more crazy trades that we had during this deadline, and the Padres received Mason Miller and JP Sears for Leodalis DeVries, sorry, Brandon Nett, Henry Baez, and Eduardo Nunez. This was absolutely mind-blowing when I saw it come across my phone. And man, I didn't think there was no chance that the Athletics were going to trade Mason Miller, let alone JP Sears as well. Well, maybe JP Sears. He has been, a good innings eater at, a 4.95 ERA. But this is absolutely insane. The haul that the Athletics got back, I think that, the haul beats out what they had in Mason Miller and JP Sears. Although, if the Padres do want to start to stretch out Mason Miller, and then he becomes a starter, which they do have plans for, from what I've read online, this could be, it could be flipped onto the Padres, because they get 3 more years of Mason Miller, and I think 2 more of JP Sears. So this is, you're paying for you're paying for quantity over quality here. AJ Preller has never ever cared about prospects. The list of prospects that guy has traded now just gets even crazier. It still blows my mind reading that Mason Miller was traded. Now this San Diego Padres bullpen it's like the Avengers. It's like the event. You have Mason Miller, Robert Suarez, Jeremiah Estrada, Jason Adam, and Adrian Morejon. That's 5 guys. Like the games for the Padres just need to make it 5 innings, 5-6 innings, and the game's over. Basically, you have a combination of those 5 arms every night going for you. The game's over. You have no chance. But man, it's crazy that this blockbuster happened, and they gave up 4 prospects, including the number 3 prospect in baseball. Like that has to be one of the highest prospects to ever be traded during a trade deadline. And, of course it's the Padres. Of course. Because do we expect anything less from them? Now, next, we're going to be talking about the Yankees receiving David Bednar from the Pirates for Rafael Flores, for Elgin Perez, and Brian Sanchez. I think this is a great trade for the Yankees. I know Rafael Flores was talked about quite a bit during spring training by Aaron Boone. Kind of surprised everybody with his hitting tool. But I think he kind of transfers more into a first baseman. Not the best defensively, but that has been said about a lot of the Yankees catchers lately. But I like this move for Bednar. They didn't give up anything in my mind. Even hearing stuff online, this is a horrible, horrible haul for the Pirates. Unfortunate, because that franchise just, isn't doing the greatest with, developing and bringing guys up at certain times. But I like this move for the Yankees. Bednar is controllable. He's here for not just this year, but for the year after. And after being sent down to AAA, he's been absolute nails since then. And, he's been an all-star. He's looked good. I know, at the time recording this, when he did show up for his first appearance for the Yanks, didn't go well. We don't talk about it. On to the next. He did have a 1-2-3 inning, his next appearance. So, that's a great sign. But I do like this move going forward, and this bullpen needs it. It absolutely needed the help. And, there's a couple more moves that the Yankees made that helps bolster it. But, man, it was good to see that the Yankees were actually, making some conscious efforts to get some bullpen help. Moving on to one of the more, questionable trades, San Diego and Kansas City made an interesting trade. The Padres received catcher Freddie Fermin, and Kansas City received two pitchers, Ryan Burgett and Stephen Kolak. And this was interesting. Very, very interesting because, as most people know, the San Diego Padres right now have Elias Diaz and Maldonado as their catchers. And, these two guys aren't, necessarily all-stars. But, Elias Diaz was All-Star MVP last year somehow, but, 2 years ago now. And then Martin Maldonado is apparently just a great catcher to throw to from what I hear from reports and, players saying around the league that he's just a great game caller. But this doesn't do anything for me. I know the Padres, they had to have seen something in Freddie Fermin for them to make this trade, and then to give up two controllable pitching arms. We've seen Stephen Kolak throw this year and have some success. But I think this is more of a win for the Royals, because you get two controllable arms that one of them has had some major league success, and you gave up a catcher that really wasn't doing anything exceptionally well. So this was one of those really bad head scratchers in my opinion. But who knows? Maybe Freddie Fermin could be a postseason hero, and here I'll be, eating my words at the end of the season. But just looking at this for, on paper, quote unquote, this is quite an interesting one, to say the least. Now, moving on to the New York Mets, they made quite a splash. Well, I'm going to say splash, but, a big move. And they ended up getting Cedric Mullins from the Baltimore Orioles, giving up three pitchers, Ramon Gomez, Anthony Nunez, and Chandler Marsh. There was reports saying that, obviously Cedric Mullins said he wants to stay with the franchise. This is where he belongs and feels at home. And I think everybody knew that this was a piece that the Orioles were gonna trade on, and I feel for the guy, but at the same time, he's in a much better situation with the Mets, who immediately he slots into that center field position with Jose Siri going down earlier in the season. And then right now they have Tyrone Taylor out there, who, in my opinion, Cedric Mullins is quite an upgrade offensively. Not so much defensively as Tyrone Taylor. He's a Gold Glove winner out there. But just the offensive boost that he gives this lineup definitely is going to create a spark no matter where he puts them. And also he's a speed. He's not a speed demon, but he has the ability to steal you some bases. This is a guy that's put up a 30-30 season, or was it 30-30 or 20-20? Either way, Cedric Mullins can give you that power speed potential. But at the end of the year, he is going to be a free agent. So this was kind of a haul for a rental. But I think this was a move that the Mets needed to make because, that center field was one of their positions that I think was lacking. I know you can run out Tyrone Taylor there just for the defense and, kind of get what you get with the bat. But if you're really wanting to make a postseason run, I think this was definitely one of the positions that they needed to focus on and definitely make an upgrade. So Cedric Mullins is a great addition to this lineup. Another move that was quite interesting to me was, there was rumors that we could see Carlos Correa getting traded back to the Houston Astros. And to me personally, I thought that there was no chance that this was going to happen. It was just way too crazy. I just didn't think that it was there's no chance that it was going to happen. And then, we do see a reunion between the Houston Astros and Carlos Correa. And this is essentially a salary dump. They traded Carlos Correa and some cash over to the Houston Astros, and they received left-handed pitcher Matt Maluski. This is a reunion that I think, Houston kind of wanted. This comes at a time where Isaac Paredes is now, it was reported that he had tore his hamstring, and now instead of going for surgery, he is now going to be rehabbing it. So there's a hole at third base that Carlos Correa is now going to fill. And, they'll have Jeremy Pena playing shortstop. And, whenever Paredes is ready to come back, we could see him play second. They kind of have that infield set already with Walker at first, Pena shortstop, and Correa at third. But Altuve's at second. Do they throw him back in left field? And they're still missing Yordan. Yordan has, been set back for quite a while, so maybe he comes into that DH role. But I think this is a good problem to have if you're the Houston Astros. You get one of your cornerstone pieces back in Carlos Correa, a guy that's been there for as long as they've had him. When they drafted him first overall in 2012, was part of that World Series team in 2017. But this team's looking to make a run for the postseason, and I think that Carlos Correa, being back in Houston, being a little more comfortable, knowing the situation, the ballpark, everybody there, I think we can definitely see Carlos Correa get back to, the Carlos Correa that we expected him to be, and had flashes of when he was there in Minnesota. I'm going to just quickly talk about another Minnesota sell-off piece, and that was Danny Coulomb. He went from Minnesota to Texas. This guy's pitching really quietly, a really good season. Over 31 innings, has a career best 1.16 ERA. And, this is a guy that gets a lot of ground balls, keeps the ball in the ballpark. And I think this can help a Texas Rangers team that, is banking on their bats to heat up at some point, because the pitching, especially the starting rotation, has been one of the best in the league. So just a way to bolster that bullpen to get that Rangers team over the edge and compete for a playoff spot. I think this is a great move for the Rangers. They also picked up Phil Maton from the Cardinals. This is, again, another pickup that just the Rangers need to bolster that bullpen, get more arms in there. Again, this is another quiet, good pickup. It's not going to strike out the world. It doesn't necessarily throw hard. Phil Maton has always been a guy that really is just able to spin the hell out of the baseball. So be interesting to see how these two play a role going down the stretch with a team that's looking to make a playoff push in that AL West, because it's up for grabs. Houston has it now, but with the moves that the Mariners made, and some of the moves that, Texas needed to make, I think this could come down to the wire. And speaking of bullpen pieces, the Yankees picked up another arm for their bullpen, and this one being Jake Bird from the Colorado Rockies, and they had received infielder Rock Rigo and left-hander Ben Shields. This is a guy that, again, I had talked with my boy Malcolm. Shout out Malcolm. This is a guy that I think the Yankees have ID'd for a while. This is a guy that really can spin the baseball, and Yankees love love baseball. They love sliders and sinkers, along with splitters, which, I don't think that they'll add to Jake Bird's repertoire, but this is a guy that can really spin the baseball. So, and he's pitched well at Coors, which is quite a shock, because usually it's the other way around. But with Jake Bird, his numbers, are struggling on the road compared to Coors, which is, head scratcher. But he actually just did get sent down today at the time of recording to make room for Judge to come back, but has also been struggling. So, maybe he can make a couple tweaks, get in that Yankees pitching lab, and we see him down the stretch and make an impact for this playoff push. But overall, I really like this move on paper. I just hope that he can, come back to the Major League roster and make a contribution to this pen. Next up, we have another offloading of prospects for the San Diego Padres. And they received a couple big bats. Got Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano from the Orioles. And the Orioles received a boatload of prospects. Left-handed pitcher Boston Bateman, infielder Cobb Hightower, utility guy Victor Figueroa, right-handed pitcher and Tyson Neighbors, infielder Brandon Butterworth, and a right-handed pitcher Tanner Smith. Wow. AJ Preller has, always been a guy to really offload prospects, and it never stops. It never stops. But with this move, the Padres addressed, their left field problem. That could either slot in Laureano. We've seen Ryan O'Hearn play a couple games in the outfield, can give you some first base flexibility too. But this is an immediate, we need bats and we need them now kind of move. And I kind of see where you can get a little carried away with offloading prospects, but if the Padres are being serious about making a push this postseason, these are moves that need to be made. And hey, you're not guaranteed that all these prospects are going to work out. So if you can get a proven bat, like we've seen Ryan O'Hearn be great for 2 years now in that Baltimore Orioles uniform, and Ramon Laureano, who signed even when I heard that Laureano had signed with the Orioles, I was like, I'm not too sure about this move, but he's making me eat my words apparently, because he's having the best season of his career right now. So for him to be able to get traded to a more winning team, a better situation, I think this is a great move for both sides. More of a retool for Baltimore as they, look to retool this year and maybe, make some better moves to be more competitive next year. Just get everybody healthy and maybe flip these prospects into more major league ready talent. But I think this is a good trade for both sides. I think Ramon Laureano is going to really keep the foot on the gas with this production wise for the Padres, and if that happens, this Padres team might be really, really dangerous come postseason time. Another pitching move that was made was from the Texas Rangers making a trade with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Texas Rangers received Merrill Kelly in return for Cole Drake, David Hageman, and Mitch Bratt, who I don't know if, not many buddy outside of Canada would know, but Mitch Bratt was the Canadian starter in the WBC against the USA team. Unfortunately, did get lit up quite a bit, but pretty cool that, there's a name that I recognize from this trade. But anyways, getting back to the Merrill Kelly trade, this is one of the more reliable arms that was on the market this year. And I think it'd make an impact for this Rangers team. Again, has been eating innings at a effective ERA, coming in at 3.22. And I think this is just more of a depth piece. Don't have to rely on a guy like Dane Dunning, who they traded away to the Braves to give you, 5-6 innings. This is a guy that's proven it in the postseason as well. Just a reliable arm, a seasoned vet that's been there and done that. That can definitely help this Rangers team make a push into the postseason. And then another trade that, is kind of a smaller one, but is funny that I had some points about it. The Yankees traded Oswald Peraza to the Angels for outfielder Wilberson De Pena. The writing was kind of on the wall for a guy like Peraza. Wasn't providing too much value. Was giving you some kind of defense, but man, the bat just, wasn't there. Has always been lagging quite a bit behind. Has been used as like a pinch running option. But other than that, that's about it, unfortunately, for a guy like Peraza. Playing in a lower leverage kind of team, I think now he can, play a little bit more freely. It's definitely going to get more consistent playing time due to, the Angels situation. So, I think it's a guy that I'll keep my eye on because he's still got, actually, I think he's out of options. So he should be, playing a lot or either getting DFA'd. But I think he's young enough that I think the Angels will give him a fair shot just to see what he's got and, see what they have moving forward with this team. And another one of these head-scratching moves, again, made by the Kansas City Royals, picking up Bailey Falter from the Pittsburgh Pirates for left-hander Evan Sisk and first baseman Kalen Moss. Bailey Falter, who has pitched quietly very well. This was a guy that had a ERA at almost 5 last year. He's pitching to a 3.73 ERA right now, eating innings. Isn't going to strike you out or blow you away with anything, but he's a tall, funky lefty that, sits 91, 92, but the ball and because of how tall he is, his extension, that ball gets on you a little bit quicker than you'd think. And, this is a guy that has 3 years of control remaining, and the Pirates were only able to receive someone that had an ERA of 5 and a first baseman. And those are two positions, or first base is a position that they already have filled with Pasquantino. And Pasquantino wasn't there, you'd have Kaggs playing first base. So this was a really, really interesting move. I get the Royals are trying to fill in a pitching slot with Bubic not being there and Reagans, but this was quite an interesting one. And same goes with Boston. Boston Red Sox received Dustin May, and in the Dodgers' return, they get James Tibbs III and Zach Earnhardt. Interesting, very interesting. Dustin May has always had the really good stuff to be a really good pitcher, but has always had or has always been dealing with some injuries. He had that really scary esophagus problem last year. But the fact that they traded James Tibbs, who they just received maybe 3 weeks ago from the Giants in the Rafi Devers trade, they're already flipping him. And this was a young, controllable prospect who was just drafted for a guy that was phased out of the Dodgers rotation. The Dodgers rotation he was phased out of. Let's just sit and think about that for a second. And he is a rental for the rest of the year. I get that they were trying to fill a starting rotation role, but there had to have been a better option than trading away one of the headliners in your big trade from Rafi Devers. There had to be a better way to make an impact move for a starter rather than giving away a piece that you haven't even seen really what you have in your organization. So this was really, really interesting and two just back-to-back head scratchers in my opinion. Now, after being traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates, we have yet another trade for Tyler Rogers. And this one is from Pittsburgh to the Cubs, which makes, a lot more sense. Taylor Rogers has always been a really consistent arm. Lefty, super funky. He's now going from the Reds to the Pirates, now to Chicago for outfielder Ivan Brethlour. And I think this is a great move for the Cubs. This is just getting consistent, solid arms. Throw in Kittredge in there with Taylor Rogers. Sorry. This is a good move. Two good moves for them. They also picked up Willie Castro, who I think can give them some versatility. He's simply a better Vidal Brujan, who I think was DFA'd during the roster shakeups over these last few days. But the Cubs also had DFA'd Ryan Presley, who, man, unfortunately this guy just has fallen off a complete cliff the last couple years. Really struggled at the beginning of the year. Has not been able to strike out a soul. This was always a guy that was able to spin the baseball like no other, and age really hit him like a truck, and unfortunately, I think he could get picked up by a non-contender, like a Rockies, a Chicago or a Chicago White Sox, Pittsburgh Pirates, dare I say it. But if this is it for Ryan Presley, then man, it's a really tough way to go out. Not on your terms, which is always unfortunate. And now, rounding out some of the final trades that had gone on during trade deadline, we have the Yankees receiving their last piece of their bullpen in Camilo Doval from the Giants, and in the process traded Jesus Rodriguez, Tristan Vierling, Parks Harbor, and Carlos De La Rosa. I absolutely love this trade. Jesus Rodriguez was one of the more popular names that I recognize from this trade. But again, the Yankees were able to make moves for guys with control for the next year, but while not giving up some of their big time names, like a Spencer Jones, a George Lombard, even a Cam Schlittler, who's on the Major League roster right now. So I love this trade. This just bolsters their bullpen even more. I know didn't have a great start either to his Yankee tenure, but second appearance was much, much better. 1-2-3 inning. Overall, I like this bullpen for the Yankees moving forward. It'd be interesting to see if they still want to have Devin Williams be the closer, because hasn't looked good since the All-Star break after, looking like he might have been turning a page and becoming, the Devin Williams that we expect him to be. But, it should be, you should have a plethora of options now. You have Doval, Bednar, you can even throw, Jake Bird has closer stuff, but you have Luke Weaver still in there. So you have a multitude of options to slide into that closer role if we want to move Devin Williams into, lower leverage, quote unquote, lower leverage opportunities, just to, have him not blow the game every time he comes in and have me, clenching my couch every time that I see a pitch go by. That would be lovely. But moving on to another interesting trade, we had the Tampa Bay Rays receive Griffin Jax from the Minnesota Twins, in return receiving Taj Bradley. And this was an interesting one because the Rays, just a couple of days before the trade deadline, had optioned Taj Bradley back to AAA. He had been pitching not great, had a ERA in the mid-4s after, flashing some good stuff last year. But, Griffin Jax to the Tampa Bay Rays, I'm not sure. I know that they're selling, but this is a really good arm in Griffin Jax for a Tampa Bay Rays team that is a fourth place team and isn't really competing for a wild card spot nor a division spot. So this was a weird one for me. So I'm not sure, but I do want to watch Griffin Jax pitch because I know that Tampa Bay will make him just even nastier than he is going to be. And then another interesting trade, more so I think more beneficial than it is interesting. The Tigers received Charlie Morton and some cash from Baltimore for Micah Ashman. And I think this is a good trade for the Tigers. You're getting a veteran pitcher who, as of his last 11 starts, was 7-1 with an ERA, in the mid-3s. And, still has some velo up to him. He pitched, was it yesterday or day before against the Phillies? And the velo was up to 95, 96. And mind you, this guy's almost 40. Or he might be 41. But he's up there in age. And I think this is just a good veteran to have in the rotation come postseason time. This is a guy that's been there, done that, both in starting roles and in relief roles. But this is him and Chris Paddock are just there to fill in rotation spots. Like I said earlier, with Reese Olson down for the rest of the season, they need to fill in those innings somehow. So the pickup of Charlie Morton was a good one, and I will be, I'm just going to be watching that curveball go on in the postseason one more time, maybe. So I'm glad that Charlie Morton is in a better situation with a contender, and old Uncle Chuck keeps throwing it. The last two moves we're going to be talking about is from the Royals. I know I talked about it earlier. They picked up Yaz from the San Francisco Giants and returned for Yunior Marte, relief pitcher. And this is, I think this could be the platoon, the other side of the platoon with Randall Grichuk. This is a lefty that, is obviously going to face more righties. He's going to get out of San Francisco where it's impossible to, hit sometimes. But I think with him and Grichuk splitting the platoon, I think these guys are going to be more successful. Right now, he's only hitting .231 with an OPS of .685 with 8 homers and 28 RBIs, which is not the Yastrzemski that, we expect. He is a better defender out there than someone like an MJ Melendez or a Randall Grichuk. So you kind of get that as a positive. But, we could see an uptick in production from Yaz. And, with this soft buy with the Royals, I'm still not a believer in this team at all. But who knows? AL Central has seen some crazy things over the years. And then to round everything out, we're going to be talking about the Jays and Twins trade. The Jays received right-hander Louis Varland and infielder Ty France for Alan Rodin and Kendry Rojas. I like to trade for Varland initially. This is a guy that is, one, controllable. 2 is good, and 3 I like just because he has high velo. I'm a sucker for guys that can toss a ball 98 plus. So with the Jays acquiring Varland, I think this is a good piece for their bullpen. Again, with you can shut it down 7, 8, 9 with Varland, Dominguez, and Hoffman, and then throw in a guy like Braden Fisher or Fluharty. Like I said earlier, you're just shortening the games essentially. So taking a little bit of pressure off of the starting rotation, which has had some short outings from guys like Scherzer, Bassett, Barrios. Could be getting back Manoah in a couple weeks, so he's probably going to be on a pitch count. So you could ideally even shorten his games too. Just get him into the 4th maybe, and then send out a flurry of arms to really shut the game down. I was quite surprised that they traded Alan Roden, to be completely honest. This was a guy that has been given some chances at the major league level. Not much success, but my boy AJ, shout out AJ, he's a big Alan Roden fan, was kind of happy to see him raking in, what was it, spring training or maybe earlier in the season, just given a chance. So to see him get traded to the Twins, I think this is a better opportunity for him to play more. And I don't know too much about Kendry Rojas. He is the number 6 prospect in the Jays pipeline, so could be really good. And then I think from what I heard from Mr. Dan Goldberg of the Toronto Blue Jays, my little insider, said that Ty France was just a throw-in in this trade. The main piece was Varland, and Ty France will get some at bats here and there, but I think he was just a throw-in for the team. But this guy could play second base, first base, could even see him play a little bit of third. Just some infield depth for the Jays, but overall, I like this trade for both sides. Giving Toronto some of their pieces that. The Twins were giving Toronto some of their pieces that have been playing well. Varland, I'm not sure. I think you could have got a little more, with the years of control that Varland has. But, I think you could see Kendry Rojas step into that. Not too sure. Like I said, not too sure about his background or how he is projectable. But, you trade a reliever for a reliever, so could see how that plays out in the long term. But overall, I like this trade. Now I'm just going to quickly go over some names that I thought could have been traded. Guys like IKF, actually a lot of Pirates. IKF, Tommy Pham, Dennis Santana, Andrew Heaney. Those are guys that I think should have been moved. Like, the Pirates aren't being competitive. They're not being competitive anytime soon. So why are we holding on to guys that, have been playing well? Tommy Pham, always finds a way onto a postseason roster somehow. Dennis Santana is having the best season of his career. Andrew Heaney's a lefty with postseason success. And who's the other arm I talked? Or Isaiah kind of for left up. Can play a bunch of positions, good contact bat, has some speed, some versatility. So not sure why those guys weren't traded. And then I'm kind of surprised we didn't see a guy like Pete Fairbanks traded or Yandy Diaz, especially with how the Rays have been playing. They're not ultra competitive and not, really close to a wild card spot or, the division, like I said. So some of those pieces I thought could have been traded off. And I'm surprised that Boston didn't make any more moves for an impact bat. Someone in the infield or, especially at first base where, they've kind of had a revolving door. Romy Gonzalez, David Hamilton, I don't even know who else they have on that team, but, not quote unquote non-productive bats that have been playing that position that I think that could need an upgrade for a postseason run. And then I'm surprised that the Orioles didn't really sell off any of their better arms. I was maybe thinking Felix Bautista could be moved, but at the same time, I think teams would have been asking way too much for a piece like that for a haul. But I mean, hey, San Diego Padres could have traded the rest of the farm for a guy like Bautista. But yeah, overall, this was quite an interesting trade deadline. I'm really happy with some of the moves that teams made. A lot of head scratchers, but we'll see how the rest of the season plays out for these teams and these players. And maybe we'll have a check-in at the end of the year with those guys that have been traded to see how they're doing and see if those trades were really worth it for those new teams. But with all that being said, I think that's going to close it out for today's podcast. I hope all of you enjoyed. There's a lot going on. Let me know in the comments below some of your favorite trades, if there's anything that I missed and you want my opinion on, or you want to give your opinion below on some of the trades I went on. Type that in the comment section below. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to rate and review. Helps get that podcast out there to all those baseball lovers out there. But with that being said, I appreciate you all for listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.